My husband had a history of his heart rate dropping into the low 40s. This morning it started happening again, and he collapsed, once got up and said, "I needed to call 911. He said something was different this time. By the time the paramedics got him to the hospital, his heart rate was down to 20. He was surrounded by a team of nurses and doctors trying everything to bring his heart rate up. This was when things got weird. They started to shock his heart to get it into a normal rhythm. Each shock, he said, was extremely painful. During these shocks, my husband looks up in the room full of DRs and nurses and sees an older lady in normal clothing, no badge on, approach him. This furring all the chaos of multiple medical staff trying save his life. The older woman reaches him and whispers in his ear. She tells him not to worry, everything will be okay. As she was speaking to him, an incredible warmth filled his body, and any fear he had went away, and he felt calm. The woman walks away. The doctors determine he needs an emergency pacemaker installed. He has the surgery, and then things get weirder. In ICU recovering, he shares the story with me about the lady in the ER. While sharing this story with me, he's very emotional and crying. I asked the nurse if there would have been anyone in the ER that would have approached him like the old lady in street clothes did, and she said, "No way." Okay, this is definitely getting weirder. For context, my husband is a 43-year-old, pretty much an atheist who doesn't believe in ghosts or angels. After a few days, he is released from hospital. He goes home, and I post this amazing story on Facebook. A couple days pass, and our take on reality is shook to our core. I am sleeping on his third day home when I hear him screaming and crying. Oh my God, it's her. I run to the room his is in, and he is bawling. I ask what's wrong, and he shows me a picture on his phone. It's an obituary featuring a picture of an old lady. It's her, he cries. The obituary was text to him from a close friend of ours. She had saw my post about his ER experience and did a search of the people who had died in the hospital the same day. He was in the ER. The lady I was looking at had died around the same time he was in the ER. I'm a doomsday prepper. It started after watching a few YouTube videos. I know how that sounds, but then I went on to do a battery of own research. From all my research and from experts on the uncensored sites with information no one wants you to know, I and many others believe by 2040 we will be in a nightmare with no modern conveniences, no supplies, no food. You won't be able to go outside for at least the first few years due to the contagion. After I figured out this timeline, I immediately started going in what I like to call prep mode. The thing is, though, once you begin doing it, you start having to consider what is an amount of water and food to sustain you, your 2 dogs, your 3 kids, and your wife. Bottles of water and cans of food began to overtake our garage and basement. I knew it was time to create a bunker, a large space for all of this and all of us. As the days crept closer to the world's end, I was putting the final touches so we could move in. As I looked at our stock and supplies, I started to feel anxiety. How do you know if you are prepared enough? How do you know that you will make it? I began trying to calculate for every possible scenario. It became such an obsession, I stopped sleeping to try and ensure we had enough. On day 3 of no sleep and calculations on the walls like I was in A, beautiful mind, was when the solutions started coming to me. The shadow in the corner began to whisper the plan to me. At first it seemed illogical, but as the days wore on and I continued to stress all day and all night, my shadow made more and more sense. As the day came around, I knew it was time to put all my planning in action to save my family. Slowly and methodically, I went to each of their rooms and suffocated them while they slept. I knew this was the only way to ensure they didn't die from the terrible things to come or lack of resources. I hid to the bunker with my 2 dogs. I could never kill a dog that's cruel. I had a smile on my face knowing I made the right decision. I went in and hunkered down for the long howl, turning on the radio and just waiting. But the day came and went and nothing happened. Maybe our calculations were slightly off. After a month, I knew my research had been incorrect. I had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. As I headed back into my house, ready to face the horror I had created, my decaying daughter came up to me and exclaimed, "Oh, goody daddy, you're back. Now we can play the game. Mommy's been telling us about called revenge." This was back in 1994, and I was 7 at the time. My dad had just passed away a few days ago from a car accident. He had to drive to Atlanta for work, and sadly didn't make it. I think it was the 3rd night alone with just my mum and my sister when I woke up to my mum standing at the edge of the stairs calling my dad's name as if she thought he or someone was trying to get into the house. This happened around the time my dad normally got home. He would get home around 4 to 6 a.m. depending on the shift. What made this event stick with me all these years is what happened shortly after she started calling out. There's a security keypad to the alarm at the back door that led to the garage, and it started beeping in a manner that suggested someone was trying to enter the disarm code. After that, my mum started freaking out. I began to climb out of bed and walk to my door when the bullhorn alarm started going off. The house was locked down and the garage closed, and no one was supposed to be there. When I got to my door, my mum was running and grabbed me. She then took me to my sister's room across the hall and hid us both in the closet and locked us in my sister's room, and I heard her calling the police. The cops showed up and searched the area for nearly an hour and found nothing. I remember I left the closet when the police showed up and watched them walk around our whole house and check the surrounding woods. To this day, my mum thinks it was my dad's ghost coming home from work like he usually did. It stayed with me all these years. Every door was locked, but it sounded like someone came home and tried to turn the alarm off. Several years ago, I used to babysit for my then boyfriend's brother's kid. The house was inherited by his wife from an older man she lived with and took care of before he died. I'll call him Joe. There was a sunroom you entered first, and for whatever reason, I felt compelled to say, "Hi, Joe," whenever I came over. One day, I go over to watch the kid, his parents leave, and I'm there like 5 minutes before I feel something in my eye on my contacts and go to walk into the dining room, which had a big hutch with a mirror on it to check. As I'm passing the steps leading to upstairs, I hear a very loud, distinct hello from upstairs. I must have jumped like 3 feet in the air, my heart racing. I checked upstairs, and there was no one, all windows shut, and they lived at the end of a cul-de-sac, no one around. I realized that I hadn't said "Hi, Joe" that day when I walked in. Another day, the kid is napping, and I'm at the dining room table on the phone, when I'm just looking at the mirror and see a man walk behind me in the hallway like he's going upstairs. I'm like, someone's here, hang up and check every room upstairs. No one. The parents came home not long after. I'm still shaking, and the brother says, "What is wrong with you? You look like you saw a ghost," and is laughing. I just point upstairs and say, "I gotta go." Not long after, I'm talking to the wife and say how I saw this man walk in. He was older, wearing like one of those Irish caps. She gets a picture and asked if it was him, and I'm like, yes, hat and all. She says that Joe and they catch glimpses of him from time to time. My boyfriend never believed me, but his brother did. He said one Mother's Day, he hears a man's voice right in his ear say, "Get her flowers," scared the hell out of him.